All right, we're live. All right, hi everybody. I'm Laura Hertzfeld. I'm the program director for Journalism 360. If you are watching this, I think you probably have some idea of what that is, but you'll learn a little bit more in the next few minutes. I am here with Louis Jebb, who's right below me down there. He is the CEO of Immersively, which creates content and does consulting and publishing around virtual reality storytelling, and he has a very deep background at The Independent and The Spectator, and he's joining us from London. Next to him, we have Nina Zenni. She works with the Knight Foundation. She works very closely with me on administering the grant and working on the challenge together, so she can kind of answer all of your questions that are a little bit more focused on specific admin kind of things with the grant and how grants in general work at Knight. And also specifically for this conversation, I think the Journalism 360 grant is open internationally, which is something a little bit different for the Knight Foundation, so she can talk about that as well. And then next to her, we have Thomas Seymat. Thomas is a digital journalist for Euronews and focuses on 360 news videos, and he has been very active with us on creating the Journalism 360 Challenge, and he's also going to be speaking at the Online News Association conference in Dublin coming up in May. So if each of you, Louis and Tomas, if you guys want to talk each a little bit just about your kind of roles, because you guys have been involved with J360 longer than I have, and kind of your roles as ambassadors and sort of how you kind of saw this coming together and what you're most excited about the challenge.
Sure, I'll start if Louis is okay.
Yeah.
So I've been involved with journalism and VR journalism for over a year now. And it was really great to see the community being created and coalescing around the Journalism 360. I'm not in a big city. I'm in Lyon in France, which is like the third biggest city. And this resource online is really useful for someone like me who's not, as I said, in touch with like the Parisian media sphere or London or Berlin, where the exciting tech scene is happening. So I'm really looking forward to see people come in and join from wherever they are, because I think Journalism 360 really is a great resource to get started and to learn. And I'm glad to be able to share what I've learned since I've started.
Great. Great. Lou, you want to jump in? Oh, unmute.
Just unmute.
There you go.
Yeah, sure. So I think that the great thing about Journalism 360, as Tom was saying, is that the open source sharing of knowledge has been a great support to us, because we've been in the game since midsummer 2014. And the moment that I hooked up with Robert Hernandez's email group, which is the foundation of this, of Journalism 360, the core community, it was really light and day because of the international reach. And funnily enough, or maybe not funnily enough, the London VR scene has been fairly patchy. In the early days, we experimented both with CG storytelling and with video, and soon moved on to principally 360 video. And what is interesting is, what I think is going to be very powerful at Journalism 360 is to encourage young people coming from university, postgraduate, to get straight into this form of journalism. And I think that that's a massive resource. Also to encourage small to medium-sized publishers. And I think that's one of the problems that this group can help to solve, because if you imagine you're a publisher of a legacy media company, maybe long established, maybe less established, maybe you have a decent digital strategy set up, but it's still quite a risk to retrain your newsroom, get going, reporting live, have a strategy. And that, I think, is one of the key things, because increasingly, if you exactly put yourself in the position of a media company executive who sees all the great things happening, sees what New York Times is doing, see what CNN has announced, see what Euronews has been doing, see what Washington Post is going to be doing. The great question is, when do we jump and how do we do it? And that, I think, is going to be one of the most powerful things that Journalism 360 is going to be able to help with, as well as, with it, of course, with bringing together individual team filmmakers.
Terrific. And just to sort of take a step back for anybody who doesn't know what J360 is, although I think folks have probably read a little bit about it by this point, it's sort of a two-part thing. I mean, we're here to kind of answer questions about the challenge piece of it, which Knight and Google have come together with the Online News Association to make $250,000 available in funding for projects that further journalism through virtual reality, augmented reality, and 360 content. So we're very open to all sorts of ideas around this, but really technology and solution based to sort of broaden the reach of immersive storytelling. And that's sort of the first piece of Journalism 360. And then the second piece is a longer term project where we are going to be developing training and conversations around immersive storytelling that are more broadly available, not just to folks who are given the grant, but overall to anybody who's interested in this type of content. So that's sort of like the overall broad view. Nina, do you want to kind of jump in and just talk about the difference with this grant compared to other Knight grants that people might have applied to and sort of how we're structuring things?
Absolutely. So this time around, Knight Foundation is partnering gladly, and it's really exciting for us with the Online News Association and Google News Lab to kind of generate this really great energy around experimentation with different methods and technologies and immersive storytelling. The Knight Foundation is working, this is a collaborative challenge, so you can actually apply online directly. Because similar to challenges that we've done in the past, all of the applications are private. We ask that you submit the actual answers to your kind of grant application online. It's private. You can visit it all the way up until when the challenge closes, which is April 10th at 11:59 Eastern Time. We ask basic questions about your project. So the title, the description of what you're trying to achieve, how you're hoping it will advance the field of journalism, explaining a little bit about your team. And we ask, a lot of the time, we always encourage teams to really look at their grant application as an opportunity to be clear and concise and very intentional about what you're saying. We don't, we're very interested in the experimentation about how you're looking to really learn from this opportunity, what the project is hoping to achieve. And we just want this really to be an opportunity to kind of open up the energy for kind of generating new ideas. The grant itself is we're hoping to announce it, the winners at the end of June of 2017. And the project should begin kind of shortly thereafter. And the Google News Lab and O&A will be, and Knight Foundation as well, will kind of work to build out a community of these new experimenters in the space, to build up this community and learn from each other, and build up hopefully replicable ideas that can be generated throughout the field.
Yeah, I think also just I think people hear the word application and, oh, it's due April 10th. And I think people get really nervous about that. And I just want to say, take a look at the application. It's actually a very easy, quick thing. I think you can just kind of brainstorm a little bit and send stuff in. I just want to encourage people to take a look and not get intimidated that, you have to have some big grand scheme all completely thought out. I think it's really more about generating ideas and kind of having fun with it at this point.
Absolutely. And on that note as well, the application can be revisited. So it's not like something you have to submit immediately once you fill it out online. You can save it and revisit it once you kind of get an understanding of what we're looking for. You can chat with colleagues in the field and other people that might have ideas and collaborators that you could potentially work with. So that's a great advice, to not be too worried about the process of applying, and more focused on what the root of your idea is and working to communicate exactly what you're hoping to achieve.
Definitely. We're getting a couple of questions in. We just got a question from Doctors Without Borders, actually, and they're asking, they were wondering what the time frame is for completed projects if funding comes through. So we are aiming to have a demo day in December. So that's, we've got a few months to get stuff together. The goal is really less about having a completed, polished project. These grants are not enormous. They go up to $35,000 per grant. So I don't think we expect anybody to come in with some, crazy thing. I think it's more about having a prototype or an example that could then be expanded on to show by December. Nina, do you have anything to kind of add?
No, I think these are early stage ideas. We're not looking to be funding things that have already been built out already. So I wouldn't be too worried about the time frame. I think it's kind of super flexible depending on how the cohort kind of builds out what they're looking to achieve. And from a Knight perspective as well, the reason why we are consistently looking for early stage kind of seed ideas is so that we have the opportunity throughout the course of the grant to kind of iterate based on what you're finding on the ground.
Yeah. Great. Journalist just submitted kind of an interesting talking point that I'd love to hear Lou and Tomas weigh in on. He says, I don't see much possible play out spaces in journalism at the moment, at least not for independent producers. If I sell a reportage, mostly because the newspaper looks at it and it's fashionable to have a VR piece, but that funding piece is crucial. And I think that's a really interesting thing to kind of for us to address if you guys want to weigh in on that, because I do think that, the focus needs to be a little bit more on for this project anyway, about that's a problem that maybe there's a solution for, but also sort of how we pitch those things to higher ups who might not be the ones who are like really, championing VR right now. Lou, you want to, Tomas?
Yeah.
Whatever.
It is true that I'm not in that position, but I imagine it's very hard for independent journalists to go out there and pitch stories. And when I am actually commissioning some stories, because we are starting to do it. And by the way, if you're, you can always get in touch with me if you have ideas for Euronews to get the conversation started. It's hard to showcase the return on investment for the media, because it's a new technology, so the audience sometimes isn't really there, especially for like smaller publication. But I also think that independent journalists who are willing to invest time to learn how to do it, and surely now there's enough resources online to do so, and just go out there and try it out. Sometimes just pitch it on the side of their news package that they can send. Their cost will go down as well. And it's crucial as well. When you start learning how to do video journalism, you're not, fully ready yet. From the moment you buy your camera, it's just the same thing with 360, and you have to learn. And if we look back at the path we've walked since Louis is a veteran, and I'm have over a year of experience, but how pervasive it got and how better immersive stories got as well. We can only be hopeful for the future.
Okay.
May I chime in on that one?
Sure.
I think it's a very real problem that Journalist raises. And in fact, it's something that we've been battling with since late 2014. And to such an extent that we've actually, with backing from Google Digital News Initiative, they're lucky enough to get a prototype grant. We're developing a white label application called Sphere, so that anybody can upload on a freemium model, upload their content, but also, the thing I mentioned about, small to medium-sized publishers can white label this. And another problem that I encountered in the early days was people would say, oh, this is very cool. At the point that Journalist makes about, this is cool, fashionable, maybe we'll do one. But then where's the rest of the story? So what it also does is it takes you using AI to hyper relevant content, which I think is a key thing, that if people are going to invest in this format, they should beware making it a special case. So obviously there's always going to be development costs involved in that. But if you imagine this is a very cool and fascinating new medium, so why not actually get new subscribers, new audience to your whole network? If you're a small to medium-sized publisher, and if you're an individual, you could also set it up to be, use that sort of application with minimal risk to actually have a place where people can put their content up together, to have a cool place. And then in terms of monetization, an interesting case study. Last summer, I was helping introduce an independent producer to a large publisher. And they said, oh, we love this. And then they just said, but we haven't got a player that will monetize it. And that was exactly why we've created this sort of for ourselves, but for everybody. so they can white label it. And I think it's a very critical thing that people need to have the option to be able to self-publish, but without huge financial risk. So that's what we're aiming to do.
Absolutely. So we're getting a few more questions in here. Krista Morrison's asking, does the grant focus on journalism per se or also journalism education? I think right now we're really open-ended on that. I think education as far as training on this type of equipment, I think that there's a broad sense of it. I think thinking about how VR could be used in the classroom, I think we're really open to it, but at the end of the day, I think it does need to advance news in some capacity. So I think there's a lot of definitions, I think, as far as education goes. So yes, I would say that we're certainly open to that. Let's see, is there a target platform for the content that we create, Vive, Rift, mobile app based? No, we're really platform agnostic for this. So whatever you think best serves your project or purpose. I would say with the aim of democratizing VR and this type of content, like think about ways in which you can reach the most people and have it sort of be the most accessible would be my advice there. But you know, I think that we're pretty open-ended on platform. Nina, I would love for you to answer these two because I don't really know the answer. So is there any connection between the Journalism 360 Challenge and the Digital News Innovation Fund? I'm not aware that there is, but I don't know much about that either. If you need to unmute.
Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
The Digital News Innovation Fund is a separate challenge that is kind of co-challenge between the journalism and the technology innovation department at Knight Foundation. The Digital News Innovation Fund is targeted primarily around the idea of artificial news and how we might, you know, better work within that environment. I think you are absolutely able to apply to both challenges if you have an idea that fits the kind of guides of both challenges. This challenge in particular, though, is a collaborative challenge with two kind of external partners focused primarily on experimentation with immersive storytelling, specifically around how we can communicate stories and tie old or traditional format to kind of new content in provocative ways. So again, there is no kind of direct relation other than the fact that Knight Foundation is funding both. And the other one, is it possible for the grant funds to be used on equipment? Yes, absolutely. We will pay for what it takes to kind of build out, understand, and generate your project. The only things that we cannot fund at Knight Foundation are things like university overhead and kind of and things like that. Most of the budget negotiations will take place once the finalists have been determined, and because these are such small grants, you know, we're not too concerned about those types of fees.
Okay, and just to clarify a little bit, there's not any real correlation. I was just getting a tweet about this. There's not a correlation between the Digital News Initiative, but like you said, I think people are open to applying for both. And Google News Lab is happy to clarify questions about that and sort of, you know, more clearly define those two different initiatives. So just follow up with me after if that's something that you're thinking about or applying for. I'm happy to get you in touch with those folks. Let's see what else is coming through here. We're getting like a lot of questions. This is great. Okay, Lucy Fulford is asking, if you're presenting a technical problem or solution for the project, would you want to see a tight story idea to illustrate it at the point of application, or happy with a broad idea at this point? I think that really depends on what your project is. I think if it's something that is very specific that you need to illustrate through a story, then absolutely go ahead and share that with us. I think if it's more of a technical solution that doesn't depend on story and can be replicated in various ways, then I don't think anything really specific is that necessary. But you know, Lou, if you guys have any thoughts on that question, it's something we've been getting a lot. So
yeah, I think the key thing is, you know, what kind of, so long as you're very clear on what's the shareable process that everybody can pick up on, I think that's the key thing. And then obviously, you know, as a creator, you want it to be a very nice bit of demonstration content, maybe if that's part of the problem solving. But I think the key thing, as Nina was saying earlier, is, you know, what's the problem? What are we trying to solve? And how is this going to be shareable to the whole community?
Terrific. AFP is asking, what about 360 photos? Is the challenge focused only on 360 video? I would say, you know, it's focused on immersive storytelling. So however you define that, and if you have an idea that's still photo based, but still takes us in a way that, you know, pushes the medium forward, I think we'd be interested and open to hearing about that. I don't think there's anything that says it has to be a particular type of video or 360 video or VR, AR. I think we're really, really open. So yeah, I think that's that. Let's see, anything else going on in here? I think we are pretty caught up. So I'm trying to think of some of the other things that have come up in previous conversations. We have a few minutes left. You know, I think that story question is one of the biggest. The international question is also one of them. So Thomas, if you want to kind of chime in and tell us a little bit about what's kind of happening in France, in your part of the world, if there are kind of ideas that you've heard come up in your community that you can talk about a little bit, give people a little guidance.
Yeah, so I actually hope the people I know in the VR world in France are listening, because I know some of them are really interested by the project, the challenge, and the grants. I know, I mean, I've met some people who are really getting into immersive photos, like, as you said, mixing audio and sound. Audio, well, music and pictures to create a immersive story, and that's probably like a smaller step to get into immersive journalism, and that's perfectly fine as well. And you have great apps to build that content, and some other. It's cool to see, because it's mostly young people getting into it with, you know, enthusiasm and a lot of energy, and in Paris and across, as well with ties with the US, creating, you know, small production companies and making the stuff. Of course, we have some more veteran production companies in France, and they're very established and they're doing a lot of work. But I think that the challenge is a great opportunity for small production company who really want to put the name out there and get a name for themselves to get a chance and apply, and they should have no reservation in applying.
Great. Let's see. Louis, you wanna jump in, talk about UK?
Sure. Yeah, certainly. I think one of the most interesting things is the way people are piling in now that we have consumer cameras. And I think that when you talk to especially individual producers about, you know, making content, submitting story, whatever it might be, that working out really innovative things to have some form of templating and some sort of base means of storytelling. And of course, there are startups who specialized in that. But I think it's one of the key things, because, you know, it's the whole cost idea. And, you know, 2014, everything was enormously expensive. And the reason I'm excited is that I think that now that people can basically get a consumer camera, say Samsung 360, can get the plugins on Adobe Premiere, it may be that with their tools they're already used to, they can get straight in. And I think this is absolutely key moment. Another thing is addressing the whole question of how do you cross an awareness threshold with the whole community? In other words, with audiences generally, because if you go to industry-wide events or go to a special agency, people get, you know, what VR is, and they get that there's video and that there's mobile phones, and then there's the superior head-mounted displays. They might have tried it. But one of the key things which I think is a problem both for high-end VR content, you know, on Vive or with Oculus Rift, you know, the most wonderful sort of gaming or social things, so that, you know, that, and I heard Robert Scoble on his podcast the other day saying there's still this huge problem of getting everybody to understand what is this. And I think one of the key things I would say to people and trying to get them involved in this area is, you know, stress the fact that you can get in with the equipment you already have. So in other words, your viewers can look on a single screen phone, start with something simple, and then tell them a story, give them some sort of guidance about, you know, you are in the middle of this action, or you're at this event. In other words, some subtle signposting to encourage them to engage. Because the curious thing, especially if you're, one of the dangers, as in all professions, is that you think everybody knows what you're trying to do. And this year, more than ever, now that we have the entry level, is for the consumer capture and also for the post-production, it's really becoming available more or less to everybody. The signaling about making content and how easy it is to publish as well. Let's not forget that 2014 there was no platforms putting 360 video, and now the biggest platforms in the world enable you to publish. And it's amazing how few people really understand this. So I think certainly from the London point of view, it's amazing how just some simple messaging, whether your favorite YouTube star or something saying, this is how I consume my 360 video, this is how I look at my Samsung Gear, this is how I fit it into my day. Some simple narrative to get the general audiences over the awareness threshold. Because otherwise, they'll have, there's this idea that people have one idea about what it can be, and they'll say, oh yeah, it's to do with gaming, and I've heard of Oculus Rift, and that's sort of where, for a lot of people, it stops. And so I think we need to look beyond. If you're stuck in the industry, you can forget that for a lot of people out there, it still needs, the explanation still needs to take place.
Yep, definitely. So we have a few more questions to just jam through. We have a few more minutes, and then just anybody can, feel free to reach out to me, and I can get you in touch with folks, or if I can answer your question, I will. My email is just j360@journalists plural, .org. Let's see. Jean Laurent's asking, I'm trying to find sources and API to integrate on 360live.fr. I don't know a lot about this. You might have more experience with this 360live.fr.
Actually, no, I don't.
No?
Sorry.
Okay.
And I'm not really experienced with live VR, live 360 as well, so.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We'll maybe try to find you some resources there going forward. Any thought on funding specialists within the program, perhaps a drone crew or two to provide shared resources? I think we're just really open to hearing ideas, and I think if that's something that your project requires, then maybe that's something that you would ask for in the funding. I don't think there's like a specific piece around that, though. Nina, would you agree with that? And I think if there's something very specific, or if it exceeds what's awarded, I think that's just sort of part of the entire concept of those applications that we're looking to see. Let's see. How many grants will be awarded? We really don't know yet. I think we are just looking at ideas. We have, this big chunk to distribute, but it really depends on the projects that come in, how much funding each one needs, and what we really think is sort of the right distribution. Nina, can you give any more specifics on that? I think that's all that I know. But
yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. I think that it's probably going to be anywhere from about 8 to 15, like you said, depending on how much each particular project requires for their to build out whatever they're planning.
Yeah. Okay. One last question that if you guys can weigh in on, I think would be fun, and then we'll close it out and get some follow-up stuff going. But Mike Downs is asking, how do we see 360 video integrating with drones, which I think is kind of an interesting thing to think about.
I thought that was a very good question on that earlier about pairing up, because it is quite specialist. We've been experimenting with static drones as well as with moving, so that you can get some sort of point of view from the drone. But it's a very skilled thing. And I think that one of the key things about journalism 360 is the community. So, somebody can say, I need somebody to work with on drones so they don't make all the normal mistakes. And then also, some geographical record of where they need the help. Because of course, there are quite a lot of very good drone filmmakers who might yet be waiting to come into 360, and that might be a really creative way of solving a problem. If you think about drones, it's not just something spectacular high up, but also how do you get a special kind of point of view in some kind of mobile event, and and then all the challenges that come with that. So I think it's a very good point.
Yeah. Tomas, do you have anything to add on that one?
The legal constraint on drone flying in France are pretty strict, so we haven't had the chance to experiment it yet.
Yeah.
But it is true that some of the most stunning visual element in a good story, of course, you always have to go with a good story, but come from drone footage in 360, and it's a whole new challenge. And I think the idea of pairing up is really interesting because collaboration, which is really the key in the immersive journalism community right now, is really helping everybody solve problem, whether they work at big companies or are independent. So yeah, I would encourage people to link up even across countries and send a pitch.
Yeah, I think that's a great note to wrap up on too, is just the community aspect. I mean, that is really our overall goal for Journalism 360, is creating a community of storytellers, of content creators, of technologists around immersive storytelling. And that's really what we all hope as organizations and as a community to get out of this. And I think ultimately that larger idea of training, of programs around immersive storytelling is really about creating that community, about pairing people up when people need help and resources. And the challenge is obviously just sort of the first step with that. So I'm really, really excited to see everybody's applications. And I think, if anybody has further questions, just feel free to reach out to me, to anybody on this call. And again, my email is j360@journalists.org. So feel free to just throw stuff at me. And thank you so much to Nina and Louis and Tomas, and we will speak to you guys all again very soon. Great. Bye, guys.